A month of rain. So just a couple of minutes ago, I came across a thread in the forums asking a reader if they ever had any paranormal or creepy things happen to them. Well, it got me thinking about this one time I was evacuated from my childhood town. I must have been about 7 at the time, and I can somewhat remember the events clearly, even if most of it is pretty hard to recall. Since all of you guys are looking for a good spook, I'll give it a shot and I'll tell you the tale. So in my childhood town, I had a good friend named Finney. Finney and I were really close, almost like brothers. I was an only child growing up, and I hung out with Finney almost every day, if memory serves. My childhood memories were so precious, and the town itself was so peaceful and benevolent. The town was surrounded by woods, and it even had its own police station and town hall. Everything was picture perfect. Everything was fine until the month of rain. When I say a month of rain, I literally mean it. It would not stop raining. It rained a whole month non-stop, and it was kind of strange since the rain came in unannounced by meteorologists. It was almost similar to that of a hurricane, with strong winds, thunder, lightning, and lengthy periods of rain. It almost came out of nowhere. It just started pouring. The sky went dim and gloomy, the clouds rolled in, and the rain fell, and it continued to fall for as long as I could remember. Eventually the ponds, canals, and rivers would start rising due to the heavy rain. The flooding all took place within the first 2 weeks. I remember this one night, when it was thundering, I was looking outside my window. I noticed that the lightning had strange colors in it. Some would look orange, others would look green, and some even purple. This made the rain fall even harder, and eventually the waters had gotten so high that they reached up to our ankles. We would still go to school since they thought the floods weren't too big of a deal. They made us wear raincoats, boots, and also made us take umbrellas with us every day. We all took notice that there was an outbreak of insomnia among us children at the time, ever since the rain had arrived. I found it hard to sleep as well, and it was one of the many reasons I looked at the lightning at night. We all felt so drawn to the rain and found it strangely soothing and calming. The lights continued in the sky every night until eventually there was the loudest thunder strike. At least, I thought it was. I bet it woke the whole town up. It struck somewhere within the woods, and then things got weird. Every night, we'd hear noises, voices, whispers, and scratching outside. Sinkholes or burrows could be found all over patios, lawns, gardens, and in the woods. The water rose up to our waists, and eventually school was called off on occasion. My friend Finney and some other kids in my clique would visit my house often to play. Sometimes they might even stay the night. I remember this one time, waking up one night and being drawn to the window. We were in our living room, and my other friend Bryce was looking outside the window, and I felt enticed to look out of it when I awoke. He and 2 other kids were at the window, looking outside as if intrigued. They said something was calling out to them and inviting them out to play outside in the rain. We looked outside, but we saw nothing. A few minutes passed as we continued to look out the window, feeling strangely enticed to go outside. Eventually the rain hit harder, and it appeared that something was swimming in my flooded backyard. It never emerged from the water to show us its identity or what it was. We just assumed it was the rain making weird patterns in the water as it hit. The urge to go outside remained, and we began hearing whispers again. They usually ranged from, "Come outside, it is safe," or "Come play with us." Most of what someone would say to convince a child to come out of a hiding spot. My dad came home, and we pretended to be asleep since it was way past our bedtimes. My dad was a police officer, and he was working really hard lately, but my friends and I did not know why. I remember my dad walking in and speaking to my mother. He said that kids were disappearing one by one. They've had no luck in catching the kidnapper, and that the abductions were taking place much more frequently. It was true. Walter, Lee, Jennifer, and many others didn't show up at school or any other type of meeting place that we would visit. I remember his face being so discouraged and worried, almost sickened. I remembered my mom and dad's conversation as my friends and I lied awake, listening to every detail. We couldn't find a single trace. Some were even taken from home, and there were no signs of forced entry, he said, and my mother sat next to him trying to comfort him. Other conversations went on, but nothing too relevant to what was happening at the time, and eventually they went to bed. However, before they did, they made sure to lock all the doors and close all the curtains. My friends and I stayed up talking about what we had just heard and made up our own little ideas on what was happening, but all of it was too childish. From time to time, the whispers would return and wake us up. Sometimes it was even scratching or clawing at the walls or windows. We wouldn't dare to open the curtains and see what it was for ourselves. Who could blame us? I mean, there was a madman kidnapping children on the loose. These events went on for weeks, and the kidnappings only got worse. Houses were found empty in the morning, and sometimes the kids would be left behind, too traumatized to speak, and alone in the house with again no signs of forced entry. The town was mortified, and eventually a town meeting was called. Some of my friends were missing too, and all that was left of my clique was Finney and Dalton. We waited outside the courthouse with my mom as it went on. I remember asking about what they were talking about, but my mom would always avoid telling me, usually by saying, "Some very boring stuff grown-ups talk about, dear," or "You're too young, you wouldn't understand. Plus, you'd probably fall asleep. It's pretty long, honey." I remember the night before the evacuation, exactly one day before the month finished. I lived next door to Dalton, and it was the night that I saw them leave. The lights didn't even go on. They sort of just went out of their house, leaving everything behind. They didn't bother to lock the door, they didn't bother to pack, and they didn't bother to change clothing. They left their front door, and they walked into the woods. I was assuming that they were taking a shortcut, but I still found it pretty strange. It was drizzling a bit when they left, and the rain was beginning to die down. I started hearing whispers again, only much louder. I looked out my window and looked at the flooded streets. I saw strange patterns in the water again, as if something was moving underneath. I then remembered that there was a crazy person stealing children at night, and decided to close my curtains so that no one could see into my room. Then the clawing and the scratching began. The whispers and the scratching never left, and I was surprised I was even able to fall asleep. I was awoken by my mother and the sound of the emergency evacuation alarm. I was too groggy to panic, and I just followed my mom outside. We were going through our escape route that went through the higher terrain within the woods, and we took a dirt road. As we plodded through the water, we met with Finney and his mother. They were both talking for a while as we paused and waited for others to join us. My father and a couple of his squad came through the road bearing shotguns and flashlights. My mom asked him what he was doing, and my father only replied, "We found the place they were keeping the children," in the grimmest of expressions I'd ever seen. My mother kissed him goodbye and wished him and his squad good luck as they trudged through the muddy and murky waters and into the deep woods. My mom motioned for me to come with her, but suddenly a woman came asking for help. My mom told me and Finney to stay put as she left with Finney's mother to assist the woman. We did as we were told, and we stood in the muddy and murky waters. We began hearing faint whispers again and felt soothingly relaxed. The feeling was ominous, and it persisted for the duration that we spent waiting for our mothers to return. I remember tripping into the water, or so I thought, until I couldn't seem to stand up. I panicked when I felt a force pulling me into the water, and as I heard Finney's panicked screams. I then felt a hand grasp tightly onto my shoulder and pull me to the surface. My mother carried me and placed me onto a nearby fence and checked on me. I thought I had probably tripped into a sinkhole or deep area in the trail, since there were many holes around here. I noticed Finney's mother calling out his name and searching everywhere for him. I didn't realize that Finney had fallen in with me too. I continued thinking it was a sinkhole we slipped into, and that's what I told Finney's mother and my mom. That is, until I felt a throbbing pain and a bruise on my ankle. Upon inspecting it, we found that a skinny, bony handprint was left on it. Another loud crash of lightning occurred, and it began to rain again. We eventually reached the high ground, and we got put into buses and cars that had waited for us. Many of the cars were loved ones and family that had come to pick up the townspeople that had evacuated. We found that my uncle was waiting for us, and we got into his car. I didn't see my dad or Finney at the evacuation area. Come to think of it, I never saw my dad or his squad again. They were announced missing, and to this day, I'm still not sure what happened to them or Finney along with the other children. I am certain of one thing though. There was something in the water. So, what'd you think? It seems the rain is letting up. Thank you for stopping by. Please like and subscribe, and I hope you'll join me again for another rainy day.